Hello and welcome to Our Kitchens. I'm Leanne Cordisco. I'm really happy to be with you here today because today we are making my all-time favorite soup, Italian wedding soup. I've been making this since I was a kid, for my family, for my friends. I love, love, love making it. I love the way it makes the kitchen smells. I love, love, love eating it and sharing it with people. I'm happy to share it with you. I hope you share it with your family and friends too. It all begins with a very rich chicken stock, and to that we're going to add pasta. We're going to add little Italian meatballs. That's kind of like the signature part of this dish. And we're also going to add some spinach and cheese. And the term wedding soup actually gets its name from not a traditional marriage between people, but a marriage between the ingredients. The soup stock, the pasta, the meatballs, the spinach, all come together to make something really special. That's the wedding that we're talking about. So let's start with making the stock. Here's how I make it. So my stock begins with 3 chicken carcasses that I've pulled out of my freezer. When I go to the farmer's market, I'll buy whole chickens and then portion them at home. Remove the breasts, the legs, the thighs. Sometimes I'll remove and use the wings, especially in the summer on the grill. They're terrific. Here I happen to have the wings still attached. And this is just super economical. This actually gives you another meal out of a whole chicken that you wouldn't get if you bought something that had already been pre-portioned in a supermarket. So it's a great way to go. I keep them in the freezer, and basically when I have enough to make a pot of soup, that's when I do it. So 3 chicken carcasses. You may ask, why 3? It's the same volume, the same mass as 1 whole chicken. And this guy's going to go in the pot. Let's look at the other ingredients. Shouldn't be a surprise to you. We've got celery. And I'm using just the tops of the celery, including the leaves. I really like the celery flavor that the leaves add. There's a ton of flavor there. I've got a couple of carrots that I've peeled. I've saved the peels. We're going to toss those in. Onion, peppercorns, kosher salt, about 6 cloves of garlic here, a couple of bay leaves. They're all going in the pool as well. Now our stock is up to a rolling boil, but before we can turn it down to a simmer and leave it alone for a while, we need to do one important thing first, and that's skim the top of it. So for the first few minutes of cooking, impurities, schmutz, scum, whatever you want to call it, will float up to the surface. And what I like to do is kind of poke at the chicken, poke at the carrots, and that's going to free some of those impurities. They'll bubble their way up to the surface, and then they can just be skimmed off. I'll do this 2 or 3 times over the next 3 or 4 minutes until I see no more collecting. Hey everybody, it's time for a bubble cam. Let's take a peek inside the pot, and you can see that the soup is boiling, but only at the edges. It's a very gentle simmer. We're not looking for a lot of activity here. We're not looking for a rolling boil. That slow, gentle simmer is what's going to give us some great chicken stock flavor. Now that my stock has been cleared, I'm going to turn the heat down to a simmer. That's a really, really important step. Why? It's going to reduce evaporation, meaning that the liquid gold that we've got brewing in this pot right here is going to stay in the pot rather than evaporating out into the room. That's also why stock pots are typically tall with a relatively narrow opening. That's to help reduce evaporation as well. So let's turn our attention to the meatballs, my favorite part of this dish. Have you noticed I giggle when I get to the favorite part of a recipe? I always have. So 2 pounds of ground beef here. This is an 80-20 mix, 80% meat, 20% fat. I like that ratio. It's great not only for meatballs, it's also great for hamburgers. If you prefer something leaner, like 90-10, go for it. If you prefer chicken or turkey in your meatballs, go for it. You can't do anything wrong to this recipe. We're going to add lots of flavor to this, so if you want to go with something that's relatively mild, like a chicken, the meatball will certainly hold up to it. So again, we'll start with 2 pounds of meat, and to that we're going to grind up in a food processor, which I cleverly have right here. We're going to grind up in a food processor about half a I'm just going to give that guy a quick chop before I put him into the food processor to get it started. In this food processor a few moments ago, I grated about a quarter cup of Parmesan cheese. That goes in. You can use Romano. I like a dry aged cheese that's got a nice sharp salty bite to it. It goes great in this recipe. We also want a generous amount of parsley. Now, even though we're using a food processor here, I don't want the stems. And normally, if I was grinding something up for a pesto, I would keep the stems. But I just don't like that texture in my meatball. So I'm going to cut off the stems of the parsley here. And guess what? Toss them into the soup pot. That's a great way to use the stems of the parsley. It's going to give your soup a little bit more flavor. You've got less stuff to throw away. In essence, the more you put in here, the better this stock is going to taste. And that's the whole goal, to make a rich, tasty chicken soup that everything else is just going to be very happy to swim in. So, parsley in the pool. Parsley stems in the pool, I should say. Parsley leaves in the food processor. I don't think I want all of those. I am also going to hit this with a little bit of milk. That's going to soften up some of the breadcrumbs that we'll be putting into the meatballs in a moment. I'm also going to add a little bit of kosher salt, some cracked black pepper. No such thing as too much. And a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, a secret ingredient. Worcestershire's got a little anchovy in it. Again, gives you that salty flavor. You won't taste anchovy. You're just going to get a nice depth. Another super important ingredient in your meatballs, garlic. So let me show you 2 ways to smash up some garlic. The first is a little more butch. You're simply going to use the back of your hand, the heel of your hand, give it a wallop, smash it down, and the garlic should come away very easily from the skins. If you don't want to do that, use the side of your knife. Place the garlic down flat on the cutting board. Place the knife, again, flat against the cutting board. If it has to be at an angle, make sure the sharp side is down. Give it a whack, and the garlic comes cleanly away from the paper. Super easy. That goes into our food processor. And let's grind it up. One more thing, we need to add an egg to this. That'll help bind our meatballs together. And that just gets 1 or 2 more spins in the processor. That's enough. We're going to take this mixture and put it into the meat. And if it seems like this is going to make a super wet meatball that's not going to hold together well, you're probably right. So we're going to add some breadcrumbs, and that'll help hold the meatball together as well. There we go. I'm going to use my hands to mix this up. Here's some of the breadcrumbs. And that's about 1 slice of bread. And smush it around. You don't have to worry about working the meatball too much. It's not going to get too tough on you. These aren't going to cook for very long. That being said, you don't want to overwork it. Just enough to get all the ingredients incorporated. This can go in the refrigerator until we're ready for it, which will be in an hour or 2. If you used a food processor to grind up the parsley and the onion and the garlic for the meatballs, don't throw away the stuff that's left in there. Put that in a little bowl. We'll use that in the soup at the end of its cooking. So that's just nothing but flavor, and that's just going to make our soup that much better. Some cheese rind here from the Parmesan cheese that I ground up in the food processor. Don't throw this away. There's a couple things you can do with it. Number one, you can save all these guys and then Gently poach them, simmer them in some white wine with a little bit of garlic. Terrific on crostini. Or you can take these cheese rinds, and since you're making something that's going to have some cheese flavor in it, toss them in the soup. So in they go too. Thanks to smart editing with my video camera, 2 hours have gone by and you haven't seen a minute of it. We are now ready to strain and drain our stock, which is done cooking. I cooked this in a spaghetti pot, which has got a strainer insert, which will make it super easy to get the majority of the chicken and the herbs out of here in one fell swoop. All I'm going to do is rest this insert on the pot. I've got the heat turned off so that most of this can drain out. I've also got a cookie sheet right here so that I can put this drainer insert on it without making a huge mess. Like I said, that'll take care of the majority of the chicken and the vegetables, but to get the rest of it, I've got a fine mesh strainer set up in a second pot here, and I'm just going to do the dumperoo for the stock into here, strain it, and then we'll put it back in the pot and finish cooking. I'm also going to shut up because this is hot and I don't want to burn myself. I need to concentrate. Here's a close-up of the stuff that's left behind that we didn't get with the strainer pot. It did get quite a bit of the chicken and vegetables out of there, so that's a good thing. I'm just going to get rid of this. And now I'm going to pour this back into the original pot so we can finish adding the meatballs. Wish me luck. That one's not so bad. There's no strainer to get in the way to splash all over me. Before I form my meatballs, I'm going to add 1 cup of acini di pepe pasta into the soup. You can use any shape you want. Little stars are great. Orzo is great. I've used angel hair pasta in the past, just broken it up into tiny little pieces. Anything works. Toss it in. Give it a little bit of a stir so it doesn't stick. Wonderful. You could stop right there and have a fantastic chicken and stars for your kids, but why stop? We're on a roll. Here's the meatballs. We want to make these pretty small. They want to fit onto a spoon, and it's literally going to be the size of, each meatball will be the size of a large marble. And spoon size, little kid mouth size. This will take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to roll them up and throw them in. As soon as they float, they're done. These don't take long to cook at all. And I'll be back in a moment once the meatballs are done. So our meatballs are done cooking. They floated up to the surface. The acini di pepe's got nice and plump and soft. Your kids are going to love it. Take a look over here. Here's the carrots that I've fished out of the chicken and the vegetables. I've cut some down. Take a look at how tender they are. They literally just fall apart. And those are going to go right back into the soup. What I also have is some of the chicken that I pulled off of the bones. That's going to go back into the soup. Here's one of the chicken bones. I said if we did our job right as soup makers, this bone should either bend or snap pretty easily in our hands, and you can see literally it snaps. So the collagen, the flavor, all that good stuff has been pulled out of the chicken and is now in our stock. Very yummy stuff. One other thing I want you to take a look at, kind of interesting. You saw me throw the cheese rinds, the Parmesan rinds, into the stock pot before. Well, here they are. They shrunk a little bit in size. Pretty easy to distinguish them. My point in showing you this is to say that it doesn't break down completely, so you're not going to get something that's overly cheesy or overly salty. It just adds that little je ne sais quoi. We're not going to put that back into the soup, so away they go. This stuff does go in. Coming down into the home stretch, take the bowl that your meatball mixture was in and crack a couple of eggs into it. 2 eggs. Shell's optional. Shell overboard. You can tell it's getting to be the end here. And whisk them up a little bit. With just a wee bit of water. You can use milk, you can use white wine if you wish. A little more cheese. This is the same Parmesan I used before for the meatballs. Give that a nice whisk. You don't need any salt. You could add pepper here if you wish. A little bit can't hurt. And now we're going to add this to the soup. One other thing. This is the remainder of the meatball mixture that I told you to reserve. Let's just toss that in there too. Take your soup. I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit on it. And I'm going to start moving the soup around, just stirring it with a spoon. And as I'm stirring it with a spoon, I'm just going to drizzle in that egg and cheese. And as soon as it hits the stock, it's going to cook. And it's going to break up into tiny, tiny little pieces. You won't even recognize it as egg and cheese. You'll just recognize it as additional flavor. There we go. That's done. And for the creme de la creme, the thing that just makes the soup come alive with color is a little bit of spinach, which I've got right here. Spinach is great if you're jonesing for some green vegetables all year long. You can get it at the farmer's market, winter, spring, summer, or fall. I typically don't buy tomatoes or anything like that in the winter, especially from supermarkets, because they just don't taste like anything. But winter spinach, the same as summer and spring and fall spinach, just has a ton of flavor. You know, it's just good. So I'm using it, and into the pot it goes. You saw I just gave that a rough chop. I don't want this too small. It's going to wilt down significantly. You know that. Spinach does that. I'm going to give this about a minute or two to wilt down the spinach, and then I'll plate up a bowl for you so you can see what it looks like. Here comes the broth, a little bit of the spinach, nice big chunk of orange carrot, gorgeous, a couple of meatballs. There's those little tiny acini di pepe in there. There's a little bit of cheese. It's just a gorgeous looking bowl of soup. Take my advice. Be Italian for a day and go big with this. Italian wedding soup is supposed to make you feel great when you're making it. It's supposed to make you feel great when you're eating it. And it's supposed to show the people that you serve it to that you love them. So try the soup. Thank you for this time. For Our Kitchens, I'm Leanne Crodisco.